This is One Sentence News, a daily podcast featuring 3 news stories with a sentence-long summary and 1 sentence of context apiece. I'm Colin Wright. This is a sponsored message. I've been using Anchor as my podcast host for a while now, and it's been a pleasure to use. Anchor offers benefits that most other hosts do not. It's free to use, but it also has a collection of tools that allow you to create a podcast completely within the Anchor website or smartphone app. They distribute your show to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other distribution channels without any additional effort on your part, and you can make money from your podcast without any minimum audience size. So you can use it as a more traditional podcast host like I do, but it's also got everything you need to start a podcast from scratch. If you're keen to give it a shot, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's Wednesday, December 21st, 2022. Let's talk about the news. From Bloomberg, Trump should be prosecuted for role in January's 6th Capitol attack, U.S. House panel says. The U.S. House panel in charge of investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol building has asked the Justice Department to charge former President Trump with 4 crimes, including the very rare charge of insurrection. A former president has never been charged with insurrection before, and the other 3 crimes, including obstruction of official congressional proceedings, conspiracy to defraud the U.S., and making false statements, are also pretty unusual for anyone, much less a former president. All that said, this is a recommendation, not a binding judgment, so now the Justice Department will decide what to do with these findings and this suggestion, and this could be the end of the road for this collection of stories, or it could be the beginning of a new Justice Department-led case. From Reuters, Ghana to default on most external debt as economic crisis worsens. The Ghanaian government has announced that it will no longer service its debts as part of an interim emergency measure meant to help it shore up its struggling economy. Somewhere between 70% and 100% of the country's revenue currently goes to paying for its existing debts, a just-in-time setup that has been tricky to maintain in the wake of a November inflation increase of 50%. Protesters have been hitting the streets of Accra in recent months, angry about the rising cost of everyday goods and that the government hasn't been able to get its act together, while involved international bodies have said this isn't really a surprise, and as long as the government sticks with the terms of a recent IMF agreement, this situation should come to a relatively positive resolution eventually, though it's likely this debt spiral will impact Ghana's ability to borrow money on the international market in the future. And from the Wall Street Journal, Epic Games to pay $520 million to resolve FTC allegations. The maker of the wildly popular game Fortnite, alongside other gaming brands and platforms, has agreed to pay about $520 million to the U.S. Federal Trade Commission as part of a settlement with that agency over allegations that the company violated online privacy protections for children and used dark patterns to trick users into making purchases in-game. Dark patterns are generally user interface decisions that nudge people towards certain behaviors, or trick them into clicking the wrong thing, or making a purchase they didn't intend. And Epic has been accused of using dark patterns to squeeze their players for money, while also violating the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act by collecting personal information from players under the age of 13 without notifying their parents or obtaining verifiable parental consent. This settlement is unlikely to fatally harm the company, as it was recently valued at $32 billion, but their annual revenue as of early 2022 was about the size of this settlement, so this is a significant fine, not a mere slap on the wrist. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and/or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com, and you can support this and other related projects, like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts, at understandery.com.